It felt absolutely amazing to step on a scale and finally see those numbers drop. Hi everyone, my name is Tony and this is Sinnskraft, a men's personal development channel where we talk about fitness, mindset, relationships, and lifestyle. And in today's video, I want to talk about how to eat to lose weight, the only video that you're going to need. In general, nutrition is a very complicated topic. Every year, there's new information coming out, overwhelming us with the science and just making us more and more confused. And you also might be confused, which is why you're watching this video. I was confused too, trust me. And the goal of this video is really just to give you everything you need to know, not overwhelm you with the science, but just gives you the things that you could start applying today if you want to lose weight as fast as possible. So let me first tell you a little bit about myself. I have been on my fitness journey for the last 7 years. I'm a diehard gym rat for life, and I've also been an online personal trainer for 3 years in the past. I worked with many clients, many of whom were weight loss clients, achieving amazing results and dropping those pounds like crazy. In the past, I've also made hundreds of meal plans for them and for myself as well. I was somebody who was always overweight in my teens and really only started taking my weight loss seriously around 16 to 17 years old. However, my journey was full of mistakes. I actually implemented my first weight loss meal plan when I was 16 years old, and the entire meal plan consisted of eating nothing except lentil beans. If you don't know what lentil beans are, it's a type of legume, which is kind of like a type of bean you can think of. It's a very high protein food, and it's also low calorie. And in my mind, I was thinking that if I only eat lentil beans and I never eat anything else, I'm going to lose weight the best. And yes, I did lose weight, but I also became extremely skinny. I did not have a single gram of muscle on my body. It was very hard for me to build muscle eating only lentil beans at the time because I was just severely under eating. So even though I achieved my goal of losing weight, I swapped the insecurities that I had that were associated with being overweight to insecurities that I had associated with being too skinny. So in general, it was just a bunch of trial and error, and it took me many years to really figure out and gain the knowledge that I have today in order to make weight loss sustainable, healthy, and something that you can just do once and never have to worry about again, unless, of course, like life takes a turn and you need to make some adjustments again. In general, why do we want to lose weight? Losing weight is really good for two reasons. The first reason is the physical reason. It's just good for your health, right? When you are slimmer, it's a lot easier to perform those day-to-day functional tasks. It's a lot easier to literally carry yourself through life. It's also just a lot easier to breathe and go up the stairs and things like that. And the second reason is the mental reason, right? We want to feel more confident. You feel more confident when you are slimmer in general. You also feel better when you're able to put on those clothes that you really want to wear, your shirts, your pants, and they don't actually, shoot the buttons in every direction because it's so hard to buckle them in, but you feel good in your clothes. This is why weight loss is such a big thing. And in America, it's very sad because 70% of adults are overweight or obese. So weight loss is a big issue because of the nutrition that we have in this country. And it's very important to have the right knowledge if you want to keep yourself healthy, confident for many years ahead. So the way that this video is going to be laid out is that we're going to answer 3 very simple questions. And those questions are going to be what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat. That is it. Those are the only 3 questions that we need to answer to understand eating for weight loss. The first question we're going to answer is what to eat. When it comes to what to eat, there's 2 different kinds of foods that you need to know about. The first kind of food is processed food, and the second kind of food is unprocessed food. So what makes a food a processed food is literally the amount of processing that has been done to it after it was taken in its natural form. So for example, one type of processed food you can think of is pasta, right? Pasta is flour that was mixed with water and then turned into this noodle shape. But flour, before it was flour, it was milled from wheat or some other kind of grain, correct? So there was some amount of processing done to the wheat in order to turn it into pasta or bread, which is why pasta or bread are considered processed foods, even though they're minimally processed and there is not a lot of additives that they add to it as part of the processing procedure. Unprocessed foods, on the other hand, is just anything that has been taken out of nature and put on the shelves in that specific form. So one type of unprocessed food that I can think of are potatoes, for example. They're literally just taken out of the ground and put on the shelf of the grocery store, and you can buy them, cook them, and eat them, right? So that's basically the main distinction. If you want to lose weight, the majority of the time, and the majority means 80 to 90% of the time, you generally want to stick to unprocessed foods or minimally processed foods. And when it comes to processing, it's also kind of a spectrum, right? So something like pasta, if this is unprocessed and this is processed, something like pasta would probably fall maybe somewhere here, right, on the spectrum. But something like a Pop-Tart is going to go all the way to the right because it's a highly processed food. They add a whole bunch of sugar and a whole bunch of other ingredients that I can't even pronounce to those products. So that is going to be considered a highly processed food. And for weight loss in general, without going into too much detail, you want to stick as much as possible to the unprocessed or minimally processed types of foods as much as you can. So the other thing to understand is that every single type of food is composed of calories. And calories are nothing more than just a unit of energy that your body is using for various processes. So things like exercise, your organ function, things like breathing, things like digesting food, your brain function, anything like that. You need calories for all of it. And every type of food has those calories. And the calories themselves, they actually can come from three main sources in the food, or macronutrients. And those macronutrients, you've probably heard about them before, but they are carbs, protein, and fat. And those macronutrients, depending on the food that you're consuming, can be in that food in different combinations. So for example, some foods are mainly fats, like avocados. They're going to be composed of mainly fats, but they're also going to have a little bit of carbs. Some foods are primarily composed of protein. So something like a piece of steak is going to be primarily protein, and also it's going to have some fat as well and a minimal amount of carbs. So some foods are going to be mostly just one type of macronutrient. So pasta, for example, if you're just talking about normal pasta, not protein pasta, is going to be mainly composed out of carbohydrates. So in general, like I said, processed and unprocessed foods are going to be composed of those three macronutrients. The other thing to understand here is that in addition to macronutrients, there's also micronutrients. And micronutrients are those things like vitamins and minerals, which are also super important for your general health. So your skin is going to benefit greatly from vitamins and minerals. Your hair growth, just your overall well-being and your health and your hormonal balance in your body is going to be affected by them. So in general, it's also important to eat foods that are more dense in micronutrients. And actually, not surprisingly, unprocessed foods, so things like sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, vegetables, are going to be a lot more full in those micronutrients. So for weight loss, when we are answering the question of what to eat, you want to focus mainly on unprocessed foods or minimally processed foods. But like I said, only 80 to 90% of the time is going to be okay. The rest of the time, it's perfectly okay to once in a while indulge in a donut or a cookie before bed, or go out with your friends to a restaurant and eat something that you're craving and something that you really want. Life is about joy, not only about weight loss, but we're going to talk about that at the end of this video as well. So we answered the question about what to eat. Now let's answer the question of how much to eat, which is going to be the most important question that we have to answer for weight loss. When it comes to how much to eat, the first thing you need to do is you need to calculate your deficit calories and macros for weight loss. And to do that, there is hundreds of calculators that you can find online. You literally just have to type in your height, weight, and age, and the calculator is going to spit out a number or multiple numbers for you. The first number usually is going to be your calorie amount. So for somebody like myself who weighs 200 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall, at 26 years old, my cutting calories are roughly about 2,500 calories. Or, depending on the calculator, it can also vary just a little bit. And it's also sometimes going to give you your macronutrient amount as well. So how much protein, fat, and carbs you should be consuming. The only thing that you should worry about here is the amount of protein. Some calculators are going to not give you enough protein, depending, of course, on which calculator you're using. In general, you want to be consuming the amount of protein in grams that is equal to the amount of pounds that you weigh. So for example, somebody like myself who weighs 200 pounds right now, I should be consuming 200 grams of protein per day. And protein is going to be extremely important for weight loss. It's going to make you feel more full. It's going to be basically better for you and more sustainable for you because you won't be having food cravings and hunger, which is usually sometimes a symptom of you being in a caloric deficit when you are losing weight. So it's going to be important for you to eat protein, and protein is also going to ensure that you are losing less muscle mass in the process of losing fat as well, because sometimes those two things go together. So we answered the question about macro calculators. So now what do I do with my calories and macros, right? So the next step you have to do is you have to download an app on your phone. There's many apps out there. Personally, I use the good old MyFitnessPal. It's been out there for many years, and it's essentially an app that allows me to track my foods. And by tracking foods, what do I mean by tracking foods? Tracking foods is nothing but putting in your food into your daily log on your app, which shows you your calories and macros associated with that food. And the goal is by the end of the day, you should be getting to those numbers that your calculator spit out for you by eating. And it's very important to actually get to that number and not undereat, because if you undereat and you don't get to that number, you are going to slow down your metabolism. And that's one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest problems that I've seen with my previous clients too, is that they were complaining. They're like, why am I only eating salads and I'm not losing any weight? Well, because your metabolism slows down to the point where your body puts itself into this survival mode. It doesn't want to burn fat anymore. And the only way to actually cause it to burn fat is to increase your metabolism, to increase your calories back up. And then after keeping it that way for a couple of weeks, start dropping them again, because your metabolism resets. And now your body is thinking, oh, okay, I'm actually getting all the foods that I need to function properly. Now I can get rid of this fat because I don't need to hold on to it for survival. So it's very important to get to your macronutrients amount on a daily basis. And as you're tracking, essentially, you're eating those mostly unprocessed food sources. You're tracking your foods into your MyFitnessPal or any other kind of app that you choose. And like I said, your goal is to get to those macronutrient amounts every day. Now, of course, as you're buying food at the grocery store and as you're cooking your food, it's also very important to weigh your food. So you need to buy a kitchen scale where you can actually understand how much food am I putting on my plate so you can track it properly. And if you don't weigh and if you don't track, you can forget about weight loss. That is probably the most important thing you have to do for a sustainable weight loss journey. A lot of people start following diets like keto or intermittent fasting, and understand that those specific diets are not necessarily better for weight loss. It's just they're made for people who want to go into a caloric deficit without necessarily having to track their calories and macros. But if you're tracking calories or macros, you don't need to necessarily start doing keto or start doing intermittent fasting or any other kind of diet, because you're giving your body exactly the amounts of foods that it needs to, first of all, function properly, especially if you're exercising, and hopefully you are exercising. And also the amounts of foods that are going to continue burning fat in your body. So we did answer how much to eat, the most important thing. And then now the last question to answer really is when to eat. And this question is very simple. You can eat pretty much any time of the day as long as you're tracking macros. It doesn't really matter what time of the day you're eating. One piece of advice I'm going to give you here is that try not to eat 2 hours before you go to bed. And it's not because eating 2 hours or less before going to bed is going to make you gain weight in a particular way. It's more because your sleep is actually going to be impacted. I've noticed, especially with myself, that if I eat 1 hour or 30 minutes before bed, it's much harder for me to fall asleep right away because my body is busy doing digestion, and falling asleep actually becomes one of the lesser priorities. And as a result, I end up waking up the next morning to my alarm a lot less rested, and sleeping improperly actually also affects your weight loss. You want to make your body function as efficiently as possible for you to lose weight as fast as possible. So sleep is also going to be extremely important, and try to optimize it as much as you can. And one of the ways that you optimize it, you actually need to stop eating at least 2 hours before going to bed is going to drastically help you. But outside of that, that is pretty much the only thing you need to know about when to eat. One other piece of advice I will give here is that I highly recommend that everybody starts meal prepping. Meal prepping is essentially just preparing all of your food on the same day for multiple days in advance. So for example, I meal prep all of my foods on Sundays for the following 5 days, Monday through Friday, and only lunches and dinners. And my snacks and breakfast I make fresh every day. What that allows me to do is multiple things. The first thing, of course, is I'm saving money, right? I don't have as much of a chance to go to some kind of restaurant during the day for lunch when I'm at work. I know I have my meal preps in the fridge ready to go. They are already calculated for those macros that I should be consuming for that particular meal. So I know that as long as I'm eating my meal preps, I'm going closer and closer to my goal of losing fat, if that is my goal. Now, the other thing, of course, that you benefit from is that you are spending a lot less time cooking and prepping and cleaning up after yourself. It's a lot easier just to do your meal prep over the span of an hour on a Sunday, as opposed to whip out your pan, whip out your pot, clean up after every single time you are cooking a meal for yourself. So I highly recommend everybody implements meal prepping. And the other thing you can do with meal prepping is you can actually make tracking a lot more efficient in this situation. I call this technique a skeleton meal plan. It essentially means you create a meal plan for yourself that you are going to follow every single day of the week, Monday through Sunday. This way, you don't have to take out your phone and track every single meal. You just have to weigh your food if you need to weigh it, or just take out your meal prep and you're good to go. And it's a lot easier to make substitutions to your skeleton meal plan. So let's say for my lunch, I don't want to eat chicken and rice that I had on my meal plan. I want to eat some beef and potatoes. It's going to be a lot easier to make that one substitution in your MyFitnessPal or your other app that you want to use, as opposed to having to track a whole day's worth of food every single time. So for some people, for example, like myself, I can follow one singular meal plan, skeleton meal plan, for months and months. For some people, they can only do, let's say, 1 week at a time. For some people, it's not going to work, and that is also perfectly okay to do as well. So find a skeleton meal plan that works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, you can just stick to tracking your foods day to day, even though it's going to take more work for you to do that. And that is pretty much it. So once again, as long as you're mostly eating unprocessed or minimally processed foods, as long as you are tracking your foods in some kind of app and making sure that you calculated your macros and your calories and eating the amounts of foods that you need to eat for you to get to those numbers, as long as you are eating pretty much throughout your day, maybe every 2 to 3 hours every day, and not 2 hours before you go to sleep, you will see those numbers drop, guaranteed. Now, one note I also want to make here is that the number that your calculator gives you, that is going to be an estimate. It's not going to necessarily work for every single person. And the only way to adjust if that number is not accurate for you, maybe because of your genetics or your metabolism speed, is to step on a scale, an actual human scale, every week and see how your numbers are dropping. So if you see every week that your weight is dropping 1 to 2 pounds, that means you are on a very good track. You are losing weight in a healthy and sustainable way, and you don't need to make adjustments. But sometimes you might be eating, and even though you're thinking you're in a caloric deficit, you don't see your weight dropping at all, and you're staying at the same exact weight. And that means you potentially need to drop your calories further into a deficit for you to start losing weight, because maybe the number that the calculator gave you was not necessarily accurate for you. So it's not just about blindly following the number, it's also actually tracking your own weight to make sure you're progressing towards a particular goal. Now, another note I want to make is when you are weighing foods, it's very important to know, are you weighing them in a cooked state or in a raw state? And that is going to make a big difference. 100 grams of cooked rice is not the same thing as 100 grams of raw rice. So your servings are going to be extremely important. So you need to understand what kind of serving you are using. In MyFitnessPal, whenever you're selecting a food, you can actually play with different types of servings. It's like I said, it's very important to understand what serving you are working with so you can input your calories and your foods correctly. So keep that in mind. I actually go into nutrition in a lot more detail with all of the worksheets and all of the resources that allow you to calculate your macros and also understand what kinds of foods you should be consuming. And I give you a lot more tips in my course called Sinnskraft Fitness and Mindset Academy. Apart from nutrition, we also go into the exercise modules, recovery modules, and mental health modules, the other super important pillars of fitness that you need for a sustainable fitness journey. And I also give you my personalized support as long as you stay in the course and in the academy. So if you have any questions, I can answer them, within 24 hours to make sure that you are progressing towards your fitness goals and just goals of bettering yourself as a man. If you want to learn more about the Sinnskraft Fitness and Mindset Academy, you can just go to sinnskraft.com and watch the demo video. And I also put the link in the description of this video, and you are more than welcome to check it out. So now I just want to give a couple of final thoughts about nutrition and weight loss. I did mention in the beginning that you should be following whole foods or minimally processed foods 80 to 90% of the time in your diet, but understand that it's also very important to be flexible. Once in a while, it's perfectly okay to go out with your friends and have a nice dinner, or go to your grandma's house, or eat some kind of donut before bed, or ice cream when you're craving it. It's perfectly okay to do that. We cannot be slaves to our diets. One of the big mistakes that I've made in my past is that I was following my meal plan so diligently, and I was making amazing progress towards weight loss and getting abs and seeing amazing results. But I also gained this really bad body dysmorphia. I wasn't able to eat anything outside of my meal plan and not look in the mirror and think that I'm getting fatter, right? So it's very important to be flexible. This is not supposed to be an eating disorder. So from day one, as you're going into your nutrition plan for weight loss, understand that being flexible is important. Having cheat meals once in a while is very important, so that not only you're satisfying your cravings, but you're also keeping a balance to make sure your mental health stays intact. The other thing I also want to talk about, of course, is supplements. You might be asking, do I need protein powder for me to lose weight? Do I need to use thermogenic fat burners? Protein powders in general could be useful if you're not getting to your protein goal from whole foods every day. But once again, a protein powder is nothing but a processed type of macronutrient. So unless you really need them and it's hard for you to get to your protein goals, sure, a protein powder is going to be beneficial for you. But if you can get away without protein powder just by eating things like chicken, turkey, or beef, that is going to be better for you, because you're also going to be getting a lot of those amazing micronutrients that come from whole food sources. When it comes to fat burners or any other kind of supplements for fat loss, especially if you're a beginner, you don't need any of those supplements. Save your money. it's going to be a lot better just for you to stick to your nutrition plan, and the amounts of results you're going to see just from that are going to be significantly bigger than any kinds of supplements that you decide to use. In the future, you might want to try and experiment a little bit with supplements, but in general, it's not going to be important, especially the beginning stages of your weight loss journey. And that is pretty much it for this video, guys. So like I said, if you follow all the advice that I gave you here, you are going to start losing weight, you're going to become more confident in your body, and you're going to feel absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to hear about all of your results. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you found it valuable, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.